All right, let's just jump right into it, because today we're wading into some pretty wild territory. We're going to look at the stock market through a totally different lens, one that comes from the book Stock Market Astrology by Indradeep Banerjee. Yeah, we're going cosmic to try and understand a whole other way of analyzing the market.
And this really gets us to the heart of the matter, doesn't it? Can the planets, millions of miles away, actually have a real, measurable impact on our portfolios? I know, it sounds kind of out there, but let's just keep an open mind and see what the system is all about.
Okay, so to get our heads around this, we have to start at the very beginning, with the core logic. How in the world do you even start to connect the cosmos with Wall Street?
So here's how the logic goes, and it's actually pretty straightforward. Step one is something every trader knows. Markets run on human emotion, right? Mostly greed and fear. Step two, well, this is the big astrological leap of faith. The idea that those emotions are actually influenced by the planets. And if you buy into those first 2 points, then step three feels almost inevitable. Therefore, the planets can influence market trends. This is the bedrock for everything else we're going to talk about.
So if we just go with that logic for a second, the very next question has to be, how? How does this get specific? Let's dig in and see how the system actually builds out its cosmic blueprint.
This is where it gets really interesting and specific. The system basically assigns each planet to be the ruler of different sectors of the economy. It's kind of like a cosmic game of Monopoly, you know? So you see here, Mars, the planet of action, gets stuff like healthcare and metals. Jupiter, the planet of growth and abundance, naturally gets banking and finance. Saturn, the planet of structure, is tied to real estate and infrastructure. The takeaway here is pretty clear. If you're watching a certain sector, this system says you better be watching its ruling planet.
And here's a really cool way to think about the next layer of this. It's not just about the planets themselves, but where they are. Think of the planets as actors, and the zodiac signs, Aries, Taurus, etc., as the stage they're performing on. And the way these actors interact with each other, the angles they make in the sky, well, that's what supposedly creates the energy that drives investor behavior and puts on this whole big financial drama.
Okay, so we've got planets ruling sectors, but this system goes way, way bigger than that. It actually claims it can map out the entire business cycle, the whole big picture.
And this is probably the book's boldest claim. The author argues that this system isn't just theory. He says it correctly pointed to the planetary alignments that lined up with two of the biggest market crashes in history, the Great Depression in 1930 and the global financial crisis in 2008. I mean, that's a pretty stunning thing to claim, right?
So how does it supposedly pull that off? The idea is that the long-term movements of the two giants of our solar system, Saturn and Jupiter, push the economy through four distinct phases. It all starts with recession, which leads to recovery, then you get growth, and finally overexpansion, the boom times, right before the whole cycle starts all over again. These massive planetary cycles are seen as the key to long-term economic trends.
Now let's zoom all the way in. Let's go from that huge macro view down to the nitty-gritty. How would an actual trader use this stuff, like on a Tuesday morning, hour by hour?
It all comes down to a concept called the planetary hour, or hara. Basically, the day is chopped up into hour-long chunks, and each hour is ruled by a specific planet. So, if it's Jupiter's hour, the system suggests that might be a good time to look at banking stocks. It's almost like having a cosmic timetable that tells you when to focus on what part of the market.
And the book doesn't just leave it at theory. It gives a real-world example to show how this might work. Let's take a look at a specific trade in Reliance Industries, way back on September 29, 2009.
Okay, so here's the play-by-play. The trade took place during the moon's planetary hour. The astrological charts for that morning supposedly showed the moon was getting positive energy, indicating it was strong. Now remember from before, the moon is linked to crude oil. So the move was to buy shares in Reliance, a huge player in oil and gas, right when the market opened, and then sell out near the end of that same hour for a quick gain. It's a pretty fascinating look at the theory in action.
But it's not just about the hours. Traders who use this system also create something called an opening bell chart. It's literally an astrology chart drawn up for the exact moment the market opens for the day. The whole idea is to get a vibe for the day's market direction. It's like checking a cosmic weather forecast before you decide what to wear.
All right, moving on from stocks for a minute, the book also zooms in on two of the biggest commodities in the world, gold and crude oil. Let's see how the astrological code gets applied to them.
So for gold, the key planet is Jupiter, abundance. For crude oil, it's Saturn, structure and restriction. But for both of them, the really, really big deal is when these planets have a conjunction, a meeting with the lunar nodes. These nodes, called Rahu and Ketu, are basically the wild cards of the zodiac, and when a big planet lines up with one of them, it's supposed to trigger some pretty dramatic stuff.
And here's a look at one of those dramatic outcomes. The book points to the years 1979 to 1980. That's when Jupiter had a conjunction with the lunar node Rahu. And during that exact astrological window, look what happened to gold. It went on an insane run, more than doubling, from about $370 an ounce to a peak over $875.
So based on that kind of logic, the book made a really gutsy call about crude oil. It flagged a period between 2013 and 2014 when Saturn was set to have a conjunction with Rahu, and the prediction? That oil could absolutely skyrocket, possibly even hitting $350 a barrel. $350 a barrel. So the big question is, what actually happened? Well, it didn't happen. Not even close. In fact, after holding steady for a bit, oil prices actually started to crash in mid-2014. And this is a really important moment because it's a reminder of the limits of any forecasting model, whether it's based on planets or spreadsheets.
And that leads us to this, which is probably the most crucial takeaway from the book itself. The author makes it very clear that this isn't about just blindly following what the stars say. The idea is to use it as one more tool in your toolbox, one piece of a much larger puzzle, right alongside your usual fundamental and technical analysis. So, after all that, what are we left with? Is there some hidden cosmic blueprint connecting the heavens to the markets? Or are the connections we've looked at today just really compelling cosmic coincidences? Well, that's the big question, isn't it? And it's definitely one worth thinking about.